Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at the time?
Living with Mom and Dad.
Where?
21 Mountain Avenue.
In Winstead, Connecticut?
Winstead, Connecticut.
Do you recall the date?
Not.
Year? What year it was?
68. August. I'm going to say August of 68. Had to have my last summer fling before I went off with the boys.
Why did you decide to enlist?
Mainly because there was a draft and, you know, I was just flipping burgers at the Berkshire and it was just the right thing to do. I had gotten into a little trouble.
Why did you pick the Marine Corps?
We were crazy. A couple of us decided if we were going to do it, we'd do the best.
Did you sign up with some friends?
Yeah.
Who else did you enlist with?
Bob McGinn.
So you went down together?
Yep. Yep.
Where did you enlist?
Well, in Torrington. We were, you know, inducted in New Haven, but we signed up in Torrington.
Once you signed up, how long did you have before you went down for your induction?
It wasn't that long. We had it pretty well planned out. End of the summer, we'd head out.
When you enlisted and you were going in, did you go in with the knowledge that you would probably be going to Vietnam?
Pretty well, yeah.
After your induction at in New Haven, how long did you have before you left for basic training?
I believe it was days.
Oh. And where did you go for your basic training?
Parris Island, South Carolina.
And can you tell me what that was like?
When I tell people about it, I tell them it's the closest to prison that I ever want to go. It was tough, you know.
How long did basic training last?
Seems to me 8 weeks.
And what kinds of things did you do?
Trained. You know,
What did they train you in?
defense skills, killing skills, you know. Basically, it was brainwashing. They had to change us.
Do you remember any of your instructors?
Faces, not names. Yeah, I remember faces.
So this had to be a pretty rude awakening to a young fellow.
It was quite a wake-up call. Yes, it was.
What were you thinking during that period?
Just getting through it.
How did you get through it?
It's, you know, the fellowship. It's, you know, a bunch of people. All they got one goal: to graduate, get off that island.
Did you have a graduation?
Yeah, I did.
Did your family go down?
Mom and Dad and my uncle came down. Yeah, Mom and Dad didn't have a car, so my uncle brought them down. Yeah.
Where did you go after your graduation?
Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, infantry training.
Now in basic, that's just the basic training, the same training for everyone. You didn't know yet what you were going to be specializing in?
Not until you graduate.
So at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, what did they train you in?
Infantry. I was 0311, grunt.
03?
11.
So you knew right from the get-go that you were going to be a Marine grunt in Vietnam?
Once I graduated from Parris Island, yeah. Yeah.
How long were you at Camp Lejeune?
I believe that was, it seems about 6 weeks.
And what was that training like?
That was specialized, you know, rifle training and combat training.
Did you become a rifleman?
Yep.
You have your rifleman's badge?
I got no badge, no.
You just got the training in the gun.
Right, right.
What kind of a gun was it? What were you trained in?
We were trained
firearms?
with the M14.
Is that what you ended up using when you went to Vietnam?
No, I used the M16.
Is the M16 similar enough to the M14 that you knew what you were doing?
I knew what I was doing. The M14 was probably a better rifle. Yeah, that's debatable, you know.
What can you tell me about the M14?
It was heavier. It was just, I thought it was a better rifle. You know, that's what I trained on. And then Vietnam, we had the M16s, which was a good rifle. You know, it was lighter. But I just had a preference to the 14.
After your training at Camp Lejeune, where did you go?
From there, I went to, I went home on leave, and then I went to Camp Pendleton.
How long leave did you get?
I believe it was a week. I was home.
So it was a short one.
Yeah, I was home for Christmas and I think New Year's. I think I got home.
So that would have been Christmas of '68?
Yep.
And then you went to Camp Pendleton, and what did you do there?
Basically, Camp Pendleton was staging for the next move. You know, they lost my paperwork, so I was there longer than I was supposed to be. But it was basically staging area. You know.
So what did you do? Did you have duties on the base while you were waiting for your orders?
I had orders,
Oh.
but they lost my paperwork. So, yeah, I worked in the pot shack. I cleaned pots in the mess hall. And when I wasn't doing that, I was skidding off base to Oceanside, California to go to the movies or something.
When they found your paperwork, did you know then, because you already had your orders, that you were going right to Vietnam?
Yep.
What was your trip like to Vietnam? What did you go by? Did you go on a ship?
No, flight, regular charter, you know, airlines flight.
Commercial airlines?
Yeah. Went from California to Okinawa, and Okinawa to Da Nang.
When you flew over to Vietnam, did you go as a unit or did you go as an individual?
Individual.
So it was just you on the airplane?
No, the airplane was full, but we were all going different places. Guys that I had met in Camp Pendleton, but
Did Bob McGinn end up staying with you, or did we?
no, we were separated after infantry training.
When you landed in Da Nang, what was your first impression of Vietnam?
Hot, steamy. The airport just got rocketed, and we had no weapons.
Well, that must have been pretty scary.
It was an eye-opener, yes. Yes, it was.
Were you going as a replacement? Did you know what unit you were going to report to?
No.
So when you landed in Da Nang, what did you do?
Went through receiving, you know, and they divvied us up like cards, you know, sending us to different places.
So they just decided on the spot then? That's when they decided who was going where?
Well, I'm sure they had paperwork there, you know, that said they need X guys here and X guys there, and you know.
So where did you end up reporting to?
I ended up in it was An Hoa province. The main base I worked out of was called Fox Hill, and that was with it's the 1st Marine Division, 1st Marine Regiment, 2nd Battalion, Fox Company.
How did you get to that base from Da Nang? How far away was it?
I'm gonna say maybe an hour. They trucked us 6 bys.
When you got to your base, when did you actually get your weapon?
I believe I got a weapon before they shipped us off of receiving. You know, we got a lot of that stuff in receiving, and then, you know, we hauled our stuff with us to where we were going.
When you got to Fox Hill Base, who was your commanding officer?
I can't remember any names.
What company were you assigned to?
I was with Fox Company.
And were you with Fox Company for your entire time in Vietnam?
Pretty well. In the end, I had run into a little problem, and I was transferred to another company. And I don't even remember. That was like, I was wounded shortly after that, so.
What was the other company that you spent a little bit of time with?
I believe Echo, but I'm not sure.
Okay. In Fox Company, what did your duties become, and what did you do on a daily basis?
Patrols, ambushes, company sweeps. Ginger, behave. Company sweeps.
Okay, can you describe a little bit about each of those operations? What was a patrol versus what was a company sweep?
Well, like a patrol would go out during the day, and, you know, they'd have destinations and parameters set for us. We'd have to go out and patrol an area.
Was it always the area around your base, or did you go far away?
We worked out of that base. Out of Fox Hill, we shifted to other places, like sometimes we manned bridges. We were in a couple places. One was called Dodge City. It was the Arizona Territory. These were all nicknames, but Dodge City was the most brutal. Arizona Territory, we worked in the Marble Mountain area. And of course, you know, we were in other countries that wasn't supposed to be known about at the time.
So you were actually in other countries? Were you
Sure.
in Laos or Cambodia?
Both. Yeah.
Well, about that, before you tell me about that, okay, so that was your regular patrols. What was a company sweep?
They'd, you know, have a supposed hot area, and, you know, they'd either move us by truck or helicopter, and we'd go in and sweep an area looking for the bad guys.
Would it just be an area of jungle? Would it be a village?
It could be either or, you know. Villages, sometimes we were in the mountains. We're all over the place, but we only fought when they wanted to fight. You know, we didn't catch them by surprise too much. That'd be a rare day.
How would you get to these places? Helicopters?
Sometimes helicopters, sometimes they'd truck us in so far, and then we'd walk.
When you did these either patrols or company sweeps, would you go out during the day and then be back at your base at night, or were they overnight?
The sweeps could take any length of time. You know.
Could it be days?
Yeah, days, and they'd resupply us out in the field. Yeah, we could be gone for a week, 10 days at a time, depending upon where we were.
Now, when you were assigned to an ambush, what would you do?
We'd head out at night, dusk, dark, and, you know, we'd have a place where we were supposed to set up. We'd go out and set up ambush, hoping to get some bad guys.
Now, do you have any memorable experiences from any of these patrols, company sweeps, or ambushes? Can you remember any specific times that you can talk about?
Oh boy, the most vivid one I have is we went out on an ambush one night, and it was a bigger ambush. Usually ambushes were squads.
How big is a squad?
A squad is like, well, at that time squads were short-handed, so it'd be 7 to 10 guys.
So usually that's the size of your unit?
Yeah. But this one night, our company went out on a ambush, and our compound got hit that night. You know, they hit the compound while we were out on the ambush. But the thing that I remember to this day is the bugles. The bugles were blowing when we got out, and we knew big stuff was happening. And the point man on the ambush as we were going out walked face to face into one of the bad guys, and they both turned around and ran. And, you know, I can sit here and laugh about it now, but when those bugles blew.
Now, who was blowing bugles? Was that what they did?
Not all the time, but sometimes they would be pretty pumped up, and that would just pump them up more.
Now, are the bugles for the Americans or the Vietnamese?
Vietnamese, the NVA.
Oh, I've heard of their drums, but I haven't heard of their bugles.
Well, these were bugles. It's quite an eerie sound.
So when you heard that, you knew you were you were not ambushing them, and they had caught you.
Oh, they were all around us, but they didn't want us. They were after the compound. So they didn't really bother us. And then the scary part was we got called back into the compound that was getting hit. So we were scared we were going to get whacked by our own guys, never mind the ones that were trying to overrun the compound.
Yeah, how did you do that? How would they know to let you in and not the other guns?
Well, we had green flares you pop, and I'm sure, we had radios with us and stuff. There was communication, but still, in the heat of a battle, people get nervous and trigger happy. And it was pretty hairy until we got back in. And even then it was hairy when we got in because they had penetrated the compound. So they were in the area. And we just manned the perimeter, I should say. We manned the perimeter they brought us in, but there were bad guys inside the compound.
What can you tell me about your activity in Dodge City?
Dodge City, boy. The best way to describe Dodge City is it was just barren and plain. But when you went in there, it was their territory. They lived below the ground. And like you see buildings above ground, that's how they lived below ground. And by day they let us have it, and at night it was theirs. But there was always skirmishes going on, always. Someone always got hurt in Dodge City.
When you would leave for a patrol or an ambush or sweep, did you, as a member of the unit, did you know what your mission was and where you were going, or you didn't know until you got there?
No, we knew when we left.
So you always knew what you might be going, so you knew if you were heading to Dodge City?
Yeah.
What can you tell me about the Arizona territory?
It was like Dodge City, only, Dodge City was in the Arizona territory. And these places were controlled by the NVA and the VC, and by day it was ours, and by night it was theirs. And they picked when they wanted to fight. And it was just heavy duty, always. You had to be on your toes, but it would wear on you and you'd let your guard down, and that's usually when something would happen.
That must have been frustrating as a grunt to actually be at the mercy of when North Vietnamese wanted to.
Oh, absolutely. That's, you hear of atrocities, and that's why those things happen. We'd be constantly hitting booby traps. That was a daily thing, hitting booby traps. And, a skirmish once in a while, they'd shoot and run. And I was probably only in, 2 or 3 heavy duty battles. It was a lot of skirmishes, hit and run, and a lot of landmines.
Which battles were you in that you can recall?
We had this area that it butted the Ai Drang Valley, I think it was the 101st had the Idrang Valley, and we had the area that butted it, and we ran into some things there. You know, I was there in '69, and it was what was kind of called mini TET. TET 68 was the big one, and then they had another TET in '69, and I was there for that.
Can you recall any specifics of that operation?
Well, yeah, I can say, yeah, once it got so heavy we were in hand-to-hand combat, you know, and it's just scary.
Was it chaotic, or did you feel like you'd been trained and you were doing the job you were trained for and it was all running the way it was supposed to be, or was it complete chaos?
It was chaos, you know. We know how to fight and everything, but the war wasn't managed very well. You know, it was crazy war. You know, we'd fight and take a place and then pull out. You know, it was crazy. And the bosses would fly around in their helicopters and send us charging into death and destruction while they flew around, and they were never happy, you know. It was crazy.
Were there any casualties in your unit, Jared?
Yeah, took casualties all the time.
Do you know how many casualties total that Fox Company took?
No. You know, numerous. I think I was, I believe I was just nearing the end of my 10th month when I was wounded, so.
And prior to you being wounded, would you say that there was casualties on a weekly basis?
Well, absolutely. You know, booby traps were almost a daily basis.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about your missions that you went into other countries? Because now we know all about the secret war.
Right, they were search and destroy missions. You know, our job was to, I mean, they had networks, and, you know, they had their bases. I mean, people talk about the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and, you know, you think of a trail. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was a highway. I mean, trucks traveled down this thing. You know, it wasn't paved, but we bombed the hell out of it with B-52s, and the next day they'd patch it back up. It was a regular highway. And, you know, that was their sanctuaries, Laos and Cambodia.
So, did you have missions in both Laos and Cambodia?
Yeah. Yep.
And what would you do? Would they fly you over there and drop you in?
No, they couldn't do that because
So how did you get in?
we humped, you know, over mountains and, you know, see if we could catch them. And, you know, we'd run into them, but not in full force unless they wanted to, and they didn't, you know, because that probably would have brought the wrath down upon them. You know, we had skirmishes all the time. And we found, you know, tons of stocks of food, some weapons, mostly, you know, stocks of food, rice.
When you would go on a search and destroy mission, either to Laos or Cambodia, how long would you typically stay?
I would say up to a week. You know, we'd always be on the move. It wasn't like we went in there and stayed someplace. We were always on the move.
Could you describe what a typical day would be like for you?
We would go out and hump during the day. If we were back at base camp, we would hump during the day and come back, and then go out on ambushes at night. If we weren't in base camp, if we were in the boomdies, we would hump all day and set up somewhere at night, then break down and start humping again. It was always on the move, hot, tired, you know. It wore on you, really wore on you. And occasionally, you know, run into trouble.
Now, you were in Vietnam for about 10 months
Mm-hmm.
when you were wounded.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe what happened?
Yeah, we were on a sweep. We were out on a company sweep. And
Where?
this was An province, you know. I really couldn't pinpoint, you know, where, but I was walking point in this one area, and you know, there was literature scattered all over the place. Chu Hoi. We used to drop those for them, you know, telling them they could surrender to us.
So the literature was American literature dropped for them,
Yeah.
North Vietnamese.
Yeah, and it was all over the place, and I had a funny feeling, and I turned around to the guy that was behind me, and I pushed him back about another 10 yards, and within a minute or two, I hit a booby trap.
You think it was intuition? Was there any signs, or it was just a feeling you had?
It was a feeling, you know.
And so you just turned around and pushed him back?
Yeah. Kept the space between us.
And then you hit a booby trap? Do you know what it was?
It was either a hand grenade or a mortar, and I have a tendency to think that it was a mortar, 60 mortar, but I don't know for sure.
So what happened?
It blew up, and you know, I went flying in the air, I'm going to say about 10 feet, and to this day I can hear it. I let out a shriek like in a Alfred Hitchcock movie, and when I hit the ground, you know, it snapped me out of it. And most soldiers, their first question was, "Well, how are my jewels?" And because when I hit, I went right into the fetal position, and they told me they were all right. And I looked at my hand, and I knew I was going home. I was getting out of there.
Why? What was wrong with your hand?
I, you know, lost fingers, but I was pretty hurt. You know, I was chewed up real good.
Did you stay conscious?
Yeah. The medevac was out there pretty quick. I'm going to say I was within a half hour. And it was just like a John Wayne movie. They put me on the medevac, and the co-pilot looked at me and gave me a thumbs up, and I looked at him and gave him a thumbs up, and I was off to Da Nang.
Were you the only one in your squad that was injured?
This one guy that I had pushed back, he took one piece in the chest. It was a sunken chest wound.
Did he have to be medevaced out also?
Yeah, but he was up and all right within a day or two.
When that happened to you and you were hit, were there North Vietnamese around? Were you under fire then, or was it just a booby trap they had left and they had left the area?
Yeah, they had left the booby trap.
So they weren't there. So what did your squad do? What was the reaction, especially that guy right behind you?
Well, you know, when someone got hurt, we all took care of each other. I mean, we were all, you know, the thing was to stop the bleeding, you know.
Did you have a medic that worked on you, or did you have to rely on your other?
We had medics with us. Yeah, I had a medic work on me, but we all did it.
So you all received medical training?
Well, we did in infantry training, but it's the kind of thing day after day you learn the hard way. You know, you learn to stop the bleeding, you learn tourniquets, you learn crazy stuff. This one guy and I, we actually did a trach on a guy. He got shot in the face, and, you know, I couldn't do it alone, and he couldn't do it alone. We did it together.
But you knew what to do?
We knew what to do, yeah. We had to.
What actually happened? He got shot in the face,
Yeah.
so why did you have to do a trach?
Because he couldn't breathe. He was having a hard time breathing.
And you knew that immediately?
Oh, yeah.
So did you two decide right then we have to do a trach?
Yeah.
So how did you do that?
With our bayonet. Cut his throat, you know, there's right in here. You can.
Were you confident that you knew what you were doing?
We knew what we were doing. We didn't like what we were doing, but if we wanted this guy to live, that's the only way he was going to live. He was having a hard time breathing.
So what did you do and what did the other guy do?
You know, we basically did it together, but we cut and we got a tube in there.
With no anesthesia?
Oh, no, nothing.
In the field?
No, nothing. You know, you're in the middle of combat.
You were out in the middle of the jungle?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have to hold the guy down? He must have been freaking out.
Yeah, he was. I mean, you know, the poor guy was shot in the face. You know, his whole face was shattered. Yeah, I remember that. Oh, you don't forget something like that.
No, what was your thought?
Saving his life.
So you knew you just had to do it.
Yeah, you did.
You've never done a trach before in your life.
No, you run on instincts in situations like that. Yeah, you just.
Well, that guy owes you his life. Did you see him ever again later?
No.
So did your squad immediately start your medical care?
Yeah. You know,
So they managed to control the bleeding?
Yeah.
Did you go into shock?
You know, I didn't. When I went through the air and let out that scream, I was in shock. But once I thumped back to the ground, it was just like a peaceful calm. You know, I looked at my hand and I knew I was out. You know.
You did, because your fingers had been blown off?
Yeah.
And you knew that was...
I was out of there.
What was your feeling about that?
I'm out of there. Vietnam was hell. And I was finally getting out of hell.
Did you suffer any other injuries besides your fingers being blown off?
Oh yeah, I had lots. You know, my one foot took a good beating. It's got parts in it now.
What do you mean it's got parts in it now?
Well, it's been rebuilt. You know, I mean, bones were shortened and parts were put in to make it work right again. My legs one leg was really chewed up. I had shrapnel go up through my butt. I had internal injuries. You know, I had a colostomy for a while.
When they medevaced you out of that immediate situation, where did they take you?
Da Nang. I was in Da Nang, I'm going to say about 5 days. You know, I remember a little of it. I don't know how long I was out, but I remember when I came to, I was cold, shaking, cold. And they'd throw blankets on me. And the first night that I remember, these were long wards that we were on. I mean, these wards were full of wounded people. But sirens went off and the nurses came running down the corridors throwing flak jackets on us. You know, they were launching some rockets. And I remember that. The Commandant of the Marine Corps came through and pinned my Purple Heart on me.
That was at Da Nang?
I was in Da Nang, yeah.
Who was the Commandant?
Leonard F. Chapman.
So he actually went to the Da Nang hospital? Was it at the Da Nang base?
Da Nang was a big place, but whatever hospital I was in, he toured it.
And he pinned a Purple Heart on you?
Yeah.
What else did he have to say to you?
Well, he wanted to know if he could do anything for me. And I told him I'd like a cigarette. And he said he couldn't do that. And, you know, that's vaguely what I remember of Da Nang. I mean, Da Nang was, they stabilized you. You know,
Did you realize then the seriousness of all your wounds?
Pretty well, yeah. I remember when I came through and I looked down at my stomach, a piece of me was still protruding. So I called the nurse over and I said, they didn't finish putting me back together. And she looked at me and she said it was a colostomy. And she explained it, and I listened, and then she says, you know, John Wayne had one of these. That was her way of smoothing it over. And I figured, well, I guess if John Wayne had one of these, you know, they know what they're doing. But yeah, that was an experience.
So after your days at the Da Nang hospital, where did you go?
I was flown to Japan.
You know where in Japan?
No.
But it was a Marine hospital or just an American?
Naval hospital. The Navy and the Marines worked together. And there, I was there for quite a while. You know, I'm gonna say at least 3 months, but I don't know. But you know, they had to cut all my wounds. You know, they had to debride them or whatever they call it. And I went through this. They put Benadryl on them and pack them, make sure there was no infection. They didn't stitch me back up for weeks, maybe a month after I got hurt. And then when they did pull all the wounds together, they used wire sutures. You know, the wounds were so big. That's what they did, was wire sutures.
So what was that 3 months like in that hospital?
I was sick. You know, I had gotten, you know, a bad infection. I was running a temp of anywhere from 102 plus, and you know, I couldn't eat because when they had operated on me the first time, scar tissue had formed around my stomach. So they were playing that by ear before they went back in and undid that, and they were pumping my stomach, and I had IVs and yada yada yada, and I had an infection.
Was one wound infected and it spread?
It was probably in my body. You know, it wasn't like wounds were pussing or anything. Yeah. It was running through my body. And the first time that my temp really spiked, they pulled the sheets up over the railings on my bed and gave me an ice bath. That was how they brought the temp down. Well, that was hell. That didn't happen again because they'd take my temp, and before they came back, I'd shake it down a degree or two. I wasn't going to do that again. You know, we were pretty freaking crazy. But, you know, it was endless things, you know, probing and poking and operations. And, you know, I can remember these two doctors, they had a bet of a beer. They were nice guys. But when they had to go in and cut the scar tissue away from my stomach, they were betting whether I would puke or not. One said yeah, and one said no. And, you know, I was just looking at these guys, you know. And when the surgery was all over, I remember asking them, I don't remember what the answer was, but I remember asking them who won the bet. But, you know, I was on a lot of pain meds. Every 4 hours I got a shot. So pain management wasn't an issue. And, you know, I just did the best I could. I remember about the 5th or 6th day in Japan, it must have been one of them just spurts of feeling good. I decided I was going to get out of bed. Well, I did, and didn't make it too far. And then I never got out of bed again for, like, you know, a couple months. It was just one of them strange things. But, you know, these wards were, You know, I couldn't say numbers, 50 or 100. These wards had guys, you know, broken and busted. I wasn't the worst, and I wasn't the best. But it was an attitude, too. You know, I saw guys die that had less wrong with them than me. You know, they just gave up. I never gave up the fight.
Now, when you were injured and they medevaced you out, I know you told me earlier off camera, how and when was your family notified?
When I got to Japan, first thing that this nurse, you know, I came onto the ward new and they got me all squared away, and this nurse wrote a letter for me because I was too weak, and but you know, she asked me what I wanted to tell them, and she wrote it down, and she sent the letter off. My parents got that letter the same day they got notified by the government. So it was a good and a bad thing. You know, they didn't find out for at least a week, but instead of getting, you know, just the government version that I was wounded, they got a letter from me, so that at least, you know, they knew where I was.
So back in that time, an officer didn't visit the family, it was a letter in the mail?
Yeah.
And you told me that your mom had...
Mom had a premonition. She knew the day I got hurt. You know, she was out shopping with some friends, and she knew it. And to this day, she remembers it. But yeah, she knew something was wrong. And my dad was a mailman, and he got the letter at work, and he left. He came home, brought the letter home to Mom.
Wow.
And, you know, people in Windsor are fantastic. Small town. You know, Mom and Dad didn't have a lot. There were 13 of us, and they all gave Mom and Dad money so they could call me. And every Monday morning, Mom and Dad called me in the hospital. They had these phones they could wheel up to the bed. And every Monday morning, Mom and Dad would call me.
Wow.
And, you know, I could see every week, you know, I would sound a little better, you know. She always said that.
Were you able to write letters or anything? Or were you still in too bad shape?
I was in pretty rough shape. You know, I don't think I ever really wrote letters, because after Japan I was in the States, and you know, company came down to see me in the States. I was in St. Albans Naval Hospital, Jamaica Plains, New York.
Is that when, after Japan, that's where you were flown to?
Yeah, I had a stopover in DC, but that's where I ended up.
St. Albans. Now, you lost fingers on your left hand. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
How long did you stay at St. Albans?
I was there.
That's in New York?
Yeah, Jamaica Plains, New York. I'm going to say a couple of months. You know, and I had another operation there to close up my colostomy. And I was slowly regaining strength. I was starting to walk again, you know. And then they finally wrote up, you know, my prognosis that I got a discharge. I was discharged to the VA hospital, you know, and they wrote me up a disability.
You were discharged while you were in St. Albans?
Yeah, I was discharged to the VA, medical discharge.
Now, when you were at St. Albans, could your parents then come up and visit you and your family?
Yep. And that was basically when I found out the world changed. You know, there's a real flip side to this. The year I was in Vietnam, a lot of things happened in the States. You know, Woodstock happened. life really changed in this country in a year. You know, when I went away, there was a dress code for high school. When I came back, there was hippies. Sex and drug and rock and roll. That's the way it was. And I was in St. Albans, and about 6 of my friends came down to see me.
What year were you in St. Albans? So now when was this?
This is 70. This is spring of 70. I was hurt on January 9th, 1970.
January 9th?
Yeah. And these guys walked on the ward, and it was like all heads turned that way. These guys all had long hair, they had jeans, they were looking like our picture of a hippie. And I looked at these guys, and they were my friends, and I just said, the world's changed. And it really had. The world changed. It was amazing in a year how the world had changed.
What was your reaction to that? Because you missed this whole year of the culture change.
I wanted in on it. I was ready. You know, I said, all right, I want to be in on that. And I basically did that after I was discharged for a whole year. I did nothing. You know, I did what I wanted. Basically catching up on life, trying to forget what I'd seen and been through. Gingy, be a good girl. Go lay down. Go lay down.
Jerry, do you have any memorable experiences from being over in Vietnam other than when you got blown up yourself?
There were, you know, there were good times and bad times. I mean, it wasn't all bad times. It wasn't all hell. You know, we did have our good times. When we were in the rear, we'd raise hell. You know, marijuana use was prevalent. And I'll say, when I was in the rear, I did partake. But most of us grunts, when we left that rear, we were on our game. You know, it was life and death.
Would you say that most of the men in your squad smoked marijuana when you were in the rear?
Quite a few. Quite a few.
Was it easy to get access to?
Easy, real easy. Yeah. You know, the natives would bring us whatever we wanted. I mean, where I was, it wasn't prevalent because we were in, you know, infantry garrison. But, you know, in the cities, like in Da Nang, it was regular life, and that's where heroin was prevalent there. But I mean, they didn't, in the city, they didn't even carry weapons, a lot of them. Yep.
Were you awarded any medals or citations? I know you said you got the Purple Heart. Were you awarded any other medals or citations?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah, they're listed on
They're
my...
listed on your discharge papers.
Yeah.
That will accompany this record.
Yep.
All right, Jerry, I'm going to ask you a few questions now about daily life.
Mm-hmm.
When you were in Vietnam, how did you stay in touch with your family?
I was a letter writer, you know, that was I wrote. I took on this big chore once. I decided that I was going to write every one of my brothers and sisters. You know, there's 13 of us. And I pulled it off, you know, but that was our contact with the outside world, was letters.
Was the mail service good?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, you know, they got it to us when they could.
Because you have such a large family, did you receive a lot of mail then?
Mom, I always got mail from Mom, a few friends occasionally, and Mom and Dad would send the care package. Everybody loved those care packages, you know, and we'd all share them.
What was the food like?
We lived on sea rations. When we were in the rear, there would be, you know, the mess hall, but most of the times we lived on sea rations.
What's included in the sea ration?
Oh, there'd be eggs and ham and lima beans, and there'd be stew or beef steak or turkey loaf. These were all World War II sea rations.
And that was 3 meals a day?
Yeah, when we were out from the base.
How did you heat up those?
Well, They had heat tabs, but most of us use C4. That's explosives. We just rip a corner off and light it and burn like hell.
And then what do you do, put the can over it?
Yeah, we make our little stoves. We make a can with holes and then put a can on top of it.
Now, how often would you have the opportunity to be in the rear? Did you go there, like after every action, you'd have like a period to rest in the rear?
Yeah. We'd come back, and take care of ourselves and our gear, and it would depend. I think the longest we'd be in the rear was maybe 5 days or a week.
And where was the rear? Was it always the same place, or was it different?
It could have been different. Mainly our main base was this area, Fox Hill. That was our main one, but we were doing duty on a bridge once, and there was another area too, I don't remember, but we had, a certain sector, and there were certain places we'd stay. Men, they were always shifting companies and stuff.
So when you were in the rear, what did you do for food? Did they have a regular mess hall?
In the rear, they had a mess hall, yeah. I couldn't even tell you the food anymore, but it was.
But they fed you 3 cooked meals?
Yeah.
Did you always have sufficient supplies and ammunition and clothing? Were there any shortages?
I can remember once we were in the mountains and we ran out of food. We didn't have food, and for some strange reason I had a thing of bouillon cubes in my pack, and we lived on that for a couple days, and that was like steak. We didn't have any food. They didn't get us supplies. So those bouillon cubes were like steak to us.
Good thing you had them.
Yeah.
So what'd you do, ration them out to the rest of the squad?
Yeah. We shared. We all shared. We all took care of each other. When someone got hurt, it was like a brother getting hurt. We were a family. There were some issues over there, but infantry especially. I mean, the number is crazy. I think at one point there was 500,000 troops in Vietnam, but when it's broke down, the number's small that were actually doing the fighting. I wouldn't even guess the number, but it's small compared to 500,000. And we had to cover each other. We had to take care of each other. Watched our backs, and
How did you cope with the stress of the job?
Well, when we came to the rear, we got drunk. That's the bottom line. Get a little crazy. And that was our way of coping.
Do you think that was a common way for most of your buddies
Yeah.
to cope?
Yeah.
Did you do anything special for good luck?
Not really. When I went over, my mom had given me this, she called it a soldier's prayer. And I had it laminated, and I had it in my wallet. But
Do you still have it?
yeah, I do. It's a little tattered. Had a few holes in it from when I got hurt.
So it was on you when you got blown up?
Yeah. I've never done it, but I always thought about writing a Zippo company. I had a Zippo lighter in my vest pocket, and a piece of shrapnel went right through the corner of it. Tore a hole in the corner of it. And I always thought of that. But
And did the lighter still work?
I've never tried it.
Do you still have that lighter?
Yeah. But it was right in the corner part, and it tore a hole in it.
It might have saved a part of your body.
Yeah.
What did you guys do for entertainment when you weren't getting drunk?
that was basically it. I mean, occasionally there would be a movie, you know, on a screen at night. There was, you know, they didn't call it the bar, the club. You know, there was a club, but you go to the club and you can only have like 2 beers. So we would do that. I can remember once, this was a funny story. Marines weren't allowed to drink liquor because we were crazy. So they decided we couldn't drink liquor. Well, the officers could. So one night we were a little crazy and we broke into the officers' club. We stole a whole case of Jim Beam. It was Jim Beam. And this area where we were, is Fox Hill, was a sandy area. The ground was sandy. So we knew they were going to search high and low for this to find out who stole it. So we dug a hole right in front of the entrance to our hooch in the ground, and we covered it over. And whenever we came back, we dug it up and grabbed ourselves a bottle of Jim Beam.
Did they ever find out who stole
Nope. Well.
it? Did you see any USO shows while you were overseas?
It seems to me I saw a small one. Nothing like Bob Hope style or anything. But it seems to me I did see one small one. Yeah.
Did you have any leave when you were overseas?
I was supposed to go to Australia within a week or 2 when I got hurt.
Oh, so you never got to go, but that was the plan?
Yeah, my plan was to go to Australia.
Had you got your clearance and everything and your papers?
Oh, I had put paperwork in for it, and, you know, clearance was just a matter of making sure, you know, that the timing was right, but I would have gotten it.
Other than stealing the officers' liquor, do you recall any other particularly humorous events?
You know, we had a good time. We did have good times. I mean, you know, we were in hell, and we did have our good times, but nothing really jumps out at me.
What did you think of your fellow Marines?
Great guys. You know, we all pretty well covered for each other.
After you got medevaced out, did you stay in touch with anybody from your unit?
No, because I lost everything. You know, I had pictures and addresses, and when I got medevaced, I lost all my gear. I never saw any of my gear again.
So when you got medevaced out, the rest of your group had no idea what happened to you?
Other than what filtered back, I mean, they know I survived. They didn't know how bad or anything. I believe it was about 6 years later, this guy came through town. He was from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He was a good friend of mine, this guy Jeff Keister. And he looked me up. And we partied for a night, and then he was heading to the Cape. And I never heard from him again, you know. Life was moving fast, and just life went on. And then about 4 years ago, this guy, this is a funny story, this guy Greg Cannon got in touch with my sister-in-law. He had been looking for me, and he knew my name, and somehow he got a hold of my sister-in-law. And my sister-in-law called me up, and she said his name. We called him Wimpy. As soon as she said Wimpy, I knew exactly who it was. You know, I get them now, I had these goosebumps all over me. You know, and it was just crazy the way it happened, you know. And we talked on the phone for, geez, over an hour. And, you know, we've written, and I just got to take time to get out there now. But I'm going to go.
Where does he live? He still lives in Pennsylvania?
This guy, Greg, lives in Cincinnati.
Oh, this is the fellow.
Yep.
Now, he was in, Fox Company with you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Have you reconnected with any other of your buddies?
No, this Jeff I saw in the 70s and Greg. There was this guy, Pete Trudeau. Pete was originally from Florida, but his grandparents lived in Torrington. And I had connected with him on and off through the 70s and the 80s. He was a cop in Avon, and he's moved on to other things, but just sometimes out of the blue, we'll run into each other. But other than that, no. This guy Greg and I, he seemed to have been in contact with quite a few of the guys, and he was reeling them off to me. And some I could remember, and some I couldn't.
Do they have any reunions?
Not that I know of.
Jerry, what did you think of the officers?
It was, the officers were rotated. They were bought in and they were rotated. And they should have listened to us more. We were there for 13 months. These officers would come in on a 6-month rotation, and they'd be doing things by the book. And the war wasn't a book. And some of them got people hurt. And when I was hurt January 9th, 1970, there were grumblings going on then about the war. And there was crazy stuff going on. Some of these lieutenants that wouldn't listen, they had accidents. I've heard them, and I know they happened. And the war, it was getting crazy at that point. There wasn't mutiny in the air, but people were getting fed up, and there were some racial problems. Everything was going wrong. And, shortly thereafter that, things got even hairier. But yeah, there was problems were building. By this time, the war had been going on for 5-6 years.
Well, when you came back to the United States, and it was when the tensions were building, must have been, so you became one of those hippies. The peace movement was in full swing at that point. How did you feel as a combat veteran being home with the protests going on?
I stayed away from it because there were still guys there dying, and I was a soldier, and the war was wrong. We shouldn't have been there. We weren't going to win it, but I wasn't going to demonstrate. Or there's guys over there dying every day and fighting, and they didn't deserve that.
What was your homecoming like?
Well, with me, it was funny. I was in St. Albans Naval Hospital, and near the end, they were giving me weekend passes to come home. So I would take a bus, a subway to Grand Central in New York. Then I'd catch a bus to Hartford, and I'd have someone either pick me up or I'd hitchhike home. But the first time I did it, some friends of the family, some friends of my parents came and got me, and they brought me into Winston, and I just looked at them and I said, "Leave me off at the church wall." That's where we hung out, growing up. So I sat on a church wall and just watched, and nothing changed too much in Winston. And a couple people spotted me, and they stopped, and we went out for coffee, and it was just a nervous tension, it was real nervous to be home. I couldn't even put sugar in my coffee. I was shaking so much, but it was just, seemed like forever. I finally made it home.
Did your parents know you were coming, so they were expecting you?
Yeah.
When you got home after you were discharged with your disability, did you suffer any post-traumatic stress? What was it like for you to readjust to civilian life?
You know, it was easy for me. It's a small town. You know, my friends never pressed me on the issue. And, you know, I fell back pretty well in line with my friends, and, you know, we partied and did stuff. You know, a few times I had to run into protesters, and I avoided it because I can't say as I really had post-traumatic stress as such, but to this day today, I refuse to get into any fight or anything like that, because if it snaps upstairs, it's not going to be pretty. And I'm scared of that, because they taught us how to kill, you know, with our hands. And so I'm not a confrontational person, and I stay away from problems like that. So it's, you know, it was just adjusting, and I did. But I always thought, you know, being in the hospital so long too was, instead of like these guys that were coming from planes and getting off the planes in the airports and dealing with life head on, I had, you know, like 6 months or whatever
To start adjusting?
to, yeah, to acclimate.
When you were finally discharged from St. Albans permanently, so that would be your last day, do you recall what that was like?
Yeah, you know, it was, I knew I was out. I knew I was free. I was given an ambulance ride. I was transferred to West Haven, VA. And
so were you actually a patient at West Haven then?
yeah, I was supposed to get more surgery. I was supposed to get surgery on my hand, cosmetic surgery. And I got to West Haven, VA, and I just hung around for a few days, and I was getting tired of hanging around. So I said, well, what's going on? And they said, well, they were going to operate on my hand. They'd do cosmetic surgery, you know, make it look prettier and fix nerves and stuff. They said they needed more time for it to heal. So they sent me home for a month. Well, this went on for like 5 months. I'd come home for a month, and I go back to the VA, and the first couple of times they say, no, it's not ready yet. And I'd say, all right, send me home. So they'd send me home for another month. Well, that went on, I'm going to say, for 3 or 4 months. And I finally, by now I'm starting to close in on a year. And I got used to my hand the way it was. And I finally looked at them and said, let's cut to the chase here, you know. I've gotten used to my hand. I want out. And, you know, I signed a waiver, and I was out.
When you came home and you were discharged, did you go back to school at all on a GI Bill?
First year I did nothing. I collected unemployment. That was $45 a week, which was pretty good money. I had a lot of money coming in, you know. I had a disability check coming in, and I was getting a lot of old pay for all the time I was in the hospital and stuff. So money wasn't an issue, and I did nothing for a year. I partied, went where I wanted. I bought a car, and basically caught up on life, what I missed. And then after the first year, I went to Waterbury State Technical College.
What were you studying?
I was taking manufacturing engineering, but I wasn't really there to get a job after education. I was there because the VA was paying me to go. VA paid for my school, and I had all these different vacations through the year. And that was the bottom line. I mean, my first year I excelled. my second year, the partying started going on a little more. And then the third year, I had really backed off on it. And I took a couple night courses so I would have enough credits so they would keep paying me. But I finally quit with, I think it was 1 credit to go. And I decided I wanted to go to work.
So what did you do?
Well, first I got a job with the town of Winston. At the town garage, I was an inventory control clerk. They liked my college resume. Even though I quit with 1 course, it still looked pretty good. And then I did that for about 3 months, and then my dad was talking to my brother Tom about the post office, and you had to take the civil service test. And I listened. It sounded good to me, so my brother Tom and I went and took the civil service test, and because I was a disabled vet, I think I got 15 preference points. And here my brother Tom did better than me on the test, but I got these preference points, so I got in the post office within, I'm going to say 3 or 4 months of that. And that's what I did.
So you did the post office for the rest of your career?
31 years. I retired in 2005.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
Well, I belong to the VFW, the DAV, and the American Legion. You know, I'm not active.
In any of them?
No, but I belong.
What kind of activities do you do? I know you do something on Memorial Day.
I do flags, a group of people make sure all veterans got flags on Memorial Day.
On the cemeteries?
Yeah.
Which cemeteries do you guys cover?
All Winston.
So you go to all of them and put flags on?
Yeah, that's, I was told it's like 12 to 1,500 flags we put out. And a lot of it's Vietnam vets. I gotta say the Iraq and Afghanistan vets are getting treated as well as they are because of us. We remember. We don't want them treated the way we were.
Jerry, did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Well, I know they weren't out to win the war. And I know they're not out to win the Afghanistan war right now. It scares the hell out of me looking at Afghanistan. It's the same freaking mess. Same mess. No, we could have never won that war. We weren't fighting it to win. We were trying to prop up a government,
How did your military service affect your life?
I always describe it as I went in a young punk and I came out a wise man.
What kinds of things did it teach you?
Real simple things. Appreciate the stars, clean water, electricity. All the simple things in life. Us Americans, we're pretty spoiled. They don't have a clue of what the third world's like.
Jerry, is there anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't covered? Are there any other memorable experiences or incidents that you want to tell about?
Nothing, even though I got hurt, it was quite an experience in my life. It was life-changing. It was a life and death struggle, and I saw people that didn't make it, and sometimes I sit and think there's grandkids out there that never knew their grandpa, you know. And you know, if I could ever talk to them, you know, that would be ironic, but you know, I made it, and I'm thankful.
If you had it to do all over again, would you enlist in the Marines?
Yeah, I'd enlist in the Marines. It's quite a brotherhood. Vietnam might be another story. You know, we weren't there to win the war. We were just throwing good lives away. It's too bad.
Well, Jerry, I'd like to thank you for your service and thank you for this interview.
Well, thank you, Eileen.